What is up, Impact Heroes? Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Rick Ornelas. Thank you for spending some time with us today because we know time's a valuable resource and we're going to make it worth your while. I appreciate each and every one of you, not just for listening, but for who you are. I know you're sparking change to make the world a better place every day, and I am humbled and grateful for your efforts. It takes all of us doing our part to spread positive change, and that's what this show is all about. Motivating you with stories of struggle, courage, and hope to empower you to make a difference in your life and the lives of others.
What is the Igniting Hope Summit? It's a celebration of surviving life's toughest moments, the moments that tried to break us forever and didn't. We survived. Now we're going to challenge you to take it a step further. Our speakers and presenters will push you outside of your comfort zone and teach you how to find the bigger purpose to that pain. You will leave feeling transformed and empowered to take on challenges and dreams that you never thought possible.
Welcome back, Impact Heroes. Today we have the pleasure of speaking to our latest iSpark Change social impact heroes. We have two today. We have champion speaker and coach, the personal trainer for public speaking, Mark Williams, and marketing strategist, author, speaker, and TEDx coach, Cathey Armillas. Let's bring them onto the show. If I can find my mouse. Ooh, there it is. Marc and Cathey, how are you two doing today?
Amazing.
Awesome.
All right. That's good. That's good. So you're coming to us from different parts of the world. And I love that we can be together you can see you got Mark representing Brooklyn. Cathey's got East LA, it looks like. East
LA?
Yeah. So I was actually, little known fact here for iSpark Change listeners, is I was actually born in East LA. Like there was a old, I think, Cheech and Chong movie, but I was actually born in East LA in a hospital there in East Los Angeles because my aunt was the head administrator there at the hospital. So we were growing up my family lived in Burbank, but I was born way over in East LA. So that's my claim to fame.
Look at that.
For me. Little did you know.
There is a song called Born in East LA.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, but I was going with the lesser known fact there, Mark. We all know about the song, but who knows about the Cheech and Chong movie? Okay.
I do.
I knew one of you would, which is why I threw it out there.
Yep.
All right. Well, great. Well, it is cool to have you two on because I was on your show. Now, I don't know I don't think that show is even aired. I mean, it might be, you guys might love it so much, you're just going to keep it near and dear to yourself. But we had so much fun on your show, which we will talk about your show. It's about to go down, but we will talk about that a little bit today. But I wanted to have you on as social impact heroes because not only do I consider the both of you as social impact heroes, number one criteria, but number two criteria is that you two have the honor and the privilege of being the creators of the spark moment, the spark moment that spreads that ripple effect, right? Coming up with that terminology of spark moment. And our listeners know that term very well now because since it was created on your show, I have been using it over and over and over again. Haven't trademarked it yet. I need to take a note on that I need to trademark that spark moment. But yes, so listeners, Marc and Cathey are the ones that helped create spark moment when we went through discussion. And we will post in the show notes when that show does air. We'll post that in the show notes so people can check that out as well. But let's kind of dive into our conversation because we could just chat about song titles and nonsense probably for an hour. So part of the criteria of being a social impact hero is someone that is spreading positive change, is making the world a better place, having a positive impact on humanity. Now, it can be through your work. It can be through something that you do. We've had all different types of people here on the podcast, guests that in some way, shape, or form, they have a positive impact on humanity. And that's why they're called a social impact hero. So as a hero, every hero has an origin story of how they started doing their heroic work, how they got to the point that they're at on their journey. So I'd like to hear from you one by one. I'd like to hear, the 3 parts of the journey. Cathey, your heroic, how you got to where you are now, doing the work you are today. Then you, Marc, and then I want to hear how you two became a team, because you do go together. Marc and Cathey. I don't know if anyone ever says Cathey and Marc, but it just doesn't sound right. So we're going with Marc and Cathey.
We had a whole conversation about that when we were doing the show. It's like you have to go with what sounds better, and it just sounded better, Marc and Cathey.
And on that note, both of you, are there couples that and on one couple it's always the husband's name first, and then another couple it's the wife's name first, and you're like, how does that come?
Totally.
With our friends, we've literally tried to figure out why, and we think, is it because we knew this person first before we met the spouse, or is it? And I don't know if there's any logic to it. But
I feel I've put a lot of thought into this, Rick, because when I would send people invitations, I was like, am I being sexist if I do it one way and not another? And I'm a woman, I don't want to do that. But I think it's really more, because Marc and I really got into a deep conversation. I think it's more about how the syllables sound, just how it flows better. And with Marc and I, it just sounded better with Marc and Cathey. Cathey and Marc seemed to break. It didn't seem to flow.
It didn't flow. Yes.
Oh, and we did talk about that in our conversation. We did have a long conversation about this with some friends, but is it maybe if, you have a 1 syllable versus 2. So, the 1 syllable first versus the 2 kind of thing. So, I mean, that's how, people, for myself and my wife, it'd be Rick and Tanya. So the single syllable first, but who knows? We won't get, I'll do some research. I'll get back to you on that.
Yeah, I'm real curious about that. I'll tell you my quick answer to it is, before I met Cathey, I didn't really think about it. Well, that's not entirely true. I always thought about who would feel the most maybe offended if their name didn't come first.
Wow. That's awesome. Well,
I'm clearly not offended, Marc.
That's funny. All right, so let's get back to it.
First, Rick, or are we
Yes, we're going with you. We're going ladies first.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. All right, so story. How far back are we going? What are we looking for?
That's really up to you, because if I'll put it to you this way, is to get to the point where now you're doing impactful work. Okay, that might be 5 years ago. That might have been when you were 10 years old that you got put on that path, that you felt you got put on that path. So,
gotcha. Okay, I can streamline this for you. No worries. I will go back to the origin of where I kind of came from and born, just because Marc and I always have this East Coast, West Coast, riff going on. So I'm going to have to go back for a minute. I was born in Chicago. That's where both my families are from. My mom's 100% Italian, very much Italian rooted. I do believe that a lot of my speaking, my desire to speak, came from living in an Italian family where if you wanted to talk, you just had to keep talking louder and louder and get over. That's the only way you could talk in an Italian family. But we quickly moved to LA when I was really young. That's why I'm representing East Los here. And I lived there for my entire childhood. Moved up to Portland, Oregon when I was young before I had my kids. Now, the path to impact, when my kids were, I was a marketing manager for an industrial shredder manufacturer. So think really big shredder, shredding really big things like cars and boats and construction and demolition debris. So they're we're literally ripping pieces apart off of buildings and putting them in big shredders and making all of these pieces very small. So at the same time,
something out of WALL-E.
Right. Exactly. I remember seeing WALL-E and going, oh, look, they've got an industrial shredder. Love it. Yeah. And so at the same time that I was the marketing manager for this company and I launched this, get this, y'all, I launched a campaign that was before YouTube was around. I put up a video campaign, and my videos went viral, and we ended up on the David Letterman show and CNN and CNBC. And so all that stuff was kind of going wild at the time. And then 6-8 months later, YouTube was born, and then we were putting all of our videos up on their site. But at the same time, my kids were young, and I was a Toastmaster at the time. This is kind of where Marc and I's story will blend later. And I was like, why don't they have anything like this for kids? Like, I really just, why not? Kids need it more than I do. Like, I've been talking my whole life. you gotta shut me up now. Getting my kids to speak, that was a whole another thing. So I started a group called Future Stars, and I basically ran it as I called it like a leadership and communication and leadership club. And so I did a lot of leadership kind of activated activities with them, but then also was teaching the kids how to be confident. And some of these kids would come in and their face would turn red if they had to stand in front of a room full of like 10 kids. And they would look down and they would never look up, and they'd give a speech and it would be 34 seconds long. And then 2 years later, they would be like standing in front of a room and be like, hey, I'm Jennifer, and let me tell you, and then I just a switch in the confidence. And I loved that. One of the original members of that group that I started, Future Stars, would go on to be he's a big superstar. Any of the kids would know him, Zach King. He puts out videos now on TikTok, get 1 billion views. So it kind of went back to that. And so I started a marketing company, and I left the shredding company, started a marketing company, wrote a book. The book won an award, and I started to get asked to speak at marketing conferences. And I was like, wow, okay, I'm going to put this Toastmasters thing into practice here. But one of my very first clients got asked to give a TED Talk, and he was like, hey, can you help me? Because you're speaking. And I was like, yeah, I guess I can help you. I'm a Toastmaster. I'm speaking. But I didn't realize it at the time that my marketing world would soon come and like intertwine with that, because a TED Talk's a very specific legacy type talk, spreading great ideas to the world. And I quickly found out that, all a TED Talk is a mini marketing campaign for an idea. So started coaching people to give TED Talks. And then all of a sudden, most of my business switched over from like helping people with marketing to like helping people be able to tell their stories, and then helping people get on big stages like TED. And here's where I think the impact came in, Rick. It was just like, I feel really honored and blessed and privileged to be able to help everybody who I help to be able to talk to their audiences. And so I feel like I'm making an impact worldwide via the brilliance of other people. So that's kind of the streamlined version of my story. And as you know, here I am today coaching, and I do a show with Marc where we have people on our show like you who are doing amazing things. And we help them find those little spark moments, right? We help them find those little moments or those little words or the conduit to their ideas. So here I am.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you for sharing. And I do think it's important that you did go back to the leaders group and working with young people and everything, because it shows the impact that you've had for years, not just in recent times, and through the different levels of your work. And I really like what you said, Cathey, about, impact through the brilliance of other people. And, there's so many people, and I do know who Zach, I'm not a kid, but I do know who Zach King is, and he does great. I love his videos. But there are plenty of people out there that if they didn't have the coaching, if they didn't have someone to motivate them, if they didn't have someone to provide a spark moment for them, they wouldn't be impacting billions of people, or they wouldn't be impacting, anyone. And they might be living small or not living up to their potential. And that's one of the beautiful things about having people like yourselves on the show, is that when you start opening this conversation and getting people talking about their story, their origin story, they help to realize that, oh, wow, I have had quite a bit of impact, and those ripple effects have gone pretty far and wide. So thank you.
Yeah.
All right. How about you, Marc? Let's hear
All
all
right.
the
First of all,
story.
can I bow down to one of the most awesome people I've ever known on the face of this planet, and that's Cathey Armillas. So I just got to put that out of the way. And I have to tell you, before I go deep into Brooklyn, here's my David Letterman connection.
Mm.
When I was in high school, probably actually from high school to college, I was working at this retail store called Urban Outfitters. And I used to work in the bag check area. People would come in, they give me their bags, I'd hold on to them, they'd go shop, they'd come back. Well, this bag check structure was so large and so wide that on the busiest days of the shopping season, I was climbing, I was reaching, I was turning. It was a show. And somebody came into the store one day and said, I think we should have you on David Letterman. I know. I don't even think I ever told you that story, Cathey. Well, a long story short, I never made it to David Letterman, but I'll never forget working in Urban Outfitters and almost getting on the David Letterman show. But way before that, I always like to say that I started out, I continue to live, and I will always continue to live as the world champion of Mama's Boys. And that's where life started in Brooklyn. Joanna Williams is her name, and I always give her praise. And when my mother raised me, I was that poor little kid living in Brooklyn who was scared to speak up for himself. Went through a lot of trauma, a lot of trials and tribulations, and it took a group of teachers to help me to open up. It took one teacher in the second grade who pulled one kid out of the school dance. We were going to be on stage and everybody had their part, and she pulled me over. I don't know why she pulled me over. I know why she pulled me over, because I was quiet and she was trying to help me to break out of my shell. Well, I will tell you, she unleashed the inner Michael Jackson. The song went on and I just lost my mind. And I thank her for that. And I thank this other teacher who had us all stand up in front of the room and tell stories. It was a storytelling contest. I didn't have a storybook at home, so I was watching Looney Tunes, and I basically transcribed a Looney Tunes episode and told it in front of the class, and that helped me to open up. And then I fast forward, past middle school to high school, and I will tell you this one story in high school. I had a teacher by the name of Susan Palmieri, who believed in me so much in terms of acting. I'm a little dramatic if you can't tell. And I was in the drama club, and she encouraged me to apply to Carnegie Mellon for their theater program. I will tell you that I never did. And I did not do it because my mom did not have the money for the $75 application fee. When I came back after the Christmas break, Miss Palmieri asked me if I had applied, and I told her no, and I told her why I didn't. And she said to me something I will never forget for the rest of my life. She said, "I wish you would have told me, because I would have paid for the application." That was a spark moment. That was a significant moment in my life that I think really changed me, because somebody was willing to do something for me that they didn't have to. And I then started on this mission of trying to do the same thing. And as I share that with you, Rick and Cathey, it probably explains why I then became a classroom teacher, why I became an assistant principal, why I became a principal, why I became an educator. And the best part of being an English teacher was not teaching grammar, was not teaching the classics, as much as I love that. It was having impactful conversations, especially with young people who had lost their way and needed some guidance. And that became the way for me to help children. And then I started going up in front of the auditorium and speaking to kids and parents. And then somebody asked me if I ever thought about professional speaking. And I didn't even know that was such a thing. But then I joined Toastmasters. Fast forward, I'm at a Toastmasters event where I meet this phenomenal, awesome person by the name of Cathey Armillas. And one conversation over lunch launched a beautiful friendship and siblinghood that will last forever. And she has given me so much guidance about the speaking and coaching business. And to this day, I am now a speaker coach. I'm still an educator. Well, we're always educators as speaker coaches. And the greatest opportunity I have are conversations like I had earlier today, where somebody said, you know, after this conversation, I'm reminded that I can do so much more than I'm capable of. And those are the spark moments that I live for. And that's why I do what I do, all the way from Brooklyn, New York.
Yes.
Are you dropping the mic right there? You got the mic
Yeah.
right there.
Mark, drop your mic.
Yeah.
Oh,
There you go.
And now you see why I love Mark Williams. I mean,
And
Yeah.
I love Cathey Armillas.
what a phenomenal human being. Mark, I
So-
love your story.
I love you too.
Yeah.
I love you.
Oh,
Thank you very much. All right. So how long ago was that lunch? Thank you. Thank you for sharing your story, Mark. Actually, before we get to that, thank you for sharing your story because it shows that you can have impact anywhere, right? Whether you're an educator, whether you're speaking, whether you're a coach, it doesn't matter, that you can have an impact in really anything that you do. And as those teachers did, you know, Ms. Palmieri, how she did for you and your other teachers when you were younger, and they all had an impact on your development. And that's what I think a lot of people don't realize. And I know myself is, you know, it's the same from Steve Jobs. You can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them. You look backwards and then you can see the path that was laid out. And unless you have these conversations and learn about people's stories and hear where they came from, then you wouldn't know about all those spark moments in the past that you had in your past that got you to where you are today. Most people kind of glaze over like, oh yeah, I grew up here. I grew up in Brooklyn and I taught for a while. And then, you know, now I speak and, you know, I've got family and this and that. That's like not even scratching the surface. Like that's just, and that's why what I'm always encouraging are to really have these deep conversations to get, you know, inside of, you know, what really makes someone tick and where they came from and what they're all about. And it's the stories that connect us. I say that at the end of every podcast episode, you know, it's the stories that connect us. And, you know, that's the foundation of who we all are and the foundation of history. And so thank you for sharing, for sharing your stories. So now back to what I was saying. When was that lunch, that Toastmasters lunch? How many years ago?
It's about 10 years ago, right, Cathey?
Yeah, I think it was in 2012.
Where was it?
Well, we met at the LaGuardia Marriott. That's where we connected and we met. And then we went to a Mexican restaurant in Manhattan is where we met for the first time. Remember that?
Yes. We sat down.
We were sitting outside. I remember we were sitting on a patio outside.
Was it Dos Caminos?
It was. It totally was.
Dos Caminos.
It was. I was like, if you probably said it, I would remember because it's like, you know, it's been a while. It's been a minute. And then
can I say this? This is true. This is true New Yorker moment, right? I had never heard of Dos Caminos, never been to Dos Caminos. So it took somebody who doesn't live in New York to introduce me to a place that's in New York. That's the story of Marc and Cathey.
That is definitely the story of Marc and Cathey. I have made Marc now walk bridges that are like really close to him that he did not know about. We've walked over the Brooklyn. I mean, he knew about the Brooklyn Bridge, obviously. But I asked him one day, I said, do you want to walk the BMW, Marc? And he was like, the what? And I was like, the Brooklyn, Manhattan, Williamsburg, the three bridges.
Well, there was even, I had shared that picture of that arm up that's right there when you come off the Brooklyn Bridge. And Marc was like, where's that? I'm like, in your backyard? Like probably down the street from your house? You've lived there, what, 18 years?
New Yorkers.
True New Yorker.
Yeah.
Oh, well, okay. So on that note, just a small side note. All right. So we happened to be in New York for an event this past weekend. And there's this right there on the Hudson River, right by where the piers are. There's this thing. It's called the Little Island. And I guess it's apparently kind of new. It's like these like bowls, almost these concrete bowls, and then there's trees and growth, and it's this beautiful park, but it looks like a little island. Well, we kept passing it when we were in our Ubers, and passing it and passing it and passing it, and we're like, man, we need to go see that. Well, then we just start walking, my wife and I. We knew it wasn't that close. And so we're asking, we were at a restaurant. And we're like, oh, do you know where this is? And we describe it, like, oh, I think I see that on my drive. And like every single local we asked didn't know anything about. And then finally I spoke to someone the next day in my retreat, and she said, oh yeah, that's new. I'm like, okay, well, I guess that's why they don't know. But I mean, I guess it speaks to, what you were saying, is that it could be, there's just so much going on. You just kind of miss something right there.
I mean, ask him how many times he's been in the Empire State Building. Like, ask him that. It's just 2, right? Twice? And both for field trips. Like,
well, once you've gone, I mean, do you really need to go again? I mean, once you've seen it, I've been twice, but I don't live in Brooklyn, but I mean, it is what it is.
Funny. It's the most one of the most iconic like buildings in the world, and he's like, yeah, just two field trips.
Real New Yorkers only go to the Empire State Building in the 2nd or 3rd grade. That's it.
Yeah. Or if you have family come in and they want to go and you take them. Yeah. I know. It was the same way when I was living in LA and even in Houston. I mean, I've been to NASA like 20 times living in Houston. I mean, and way more than I would want to, but no offense to NASA.
Yeah.
So I want to get back to your story, the connection. What was it about that when you were at lunch at Dos Caminos? What was it that sparked that friendship, that siblinghood, as you said? You two are kind of like brother and sister. So what did spark that? What was it? And whoever wants to go first, you just ready to go.
Yeah, Mark. I mean, I have some thoughts, but I'd love to hear what you say too. Like, I think for me, we connected, and there was definitely like, I think energetically, Mark and I we're like the same age. We like the same rap, like there, TV shows. Like, I mean, energetically, like there was a lot of like similarities, but then really the core of that was like our love for speaking and sharing. Speaking was really like at the core of it. And so my sister was living in Queens at the time, and Mark used to come. This came up just like a month ago when I was in Texas visiting my sister. My niece Maya, who was a little girl at the time when we first met, she was like, oh, I remember when we used to meet Mark at Ripe. So there was this place, like a juice place called Ripe. We would go there all the time. So we went to Dos Caminos, but like Ripe was really our place that I think our friendship really budded then. And then, I met your family, you met my family. Like it just, we just kept building. We just had a really good foundation, and we just kept building.
I always sing Cathey's praises. And when I went to that first workshop, and in the first couple of seconds, she had done this activity that I thought was like super creative. And I just remember, I don't really go up to people all the time and ask about their books or whatever, but I was like, she's just so awesome and so laid back. And so it was really cool to be able to go to Dos Caminos and have lunch. And I think what gravitated me towards Cathey was, like she said, we both have this love for speaking and using our speaking and our coaching to help each other. And I was just in awe of what she was doing. And there's one moment during that conversation, Cathey, I don't know if you remember this, but there was one moment during the conversation that I thought, there's so much that I can learn and gain from being connected to this person. And Cathey, you had given me a piece of advice. You had talked about consistency. You had said that you had worked with 2 people. One person was incredibly talented, but he did not always consistently put information out there. And then there was this other person who was talented, but just not as talented as the other person. But she was always putting stuff out there. And if a period was missing, if something was misspelled, it was like whatever. She was consistent. And when you said that, it made so much sense to me that it's probably the reason why. No, it's not even probably. It's the reason why. Rick, I do with this thing called Tuesday morning tune-ups. I've been doing Tuesday morning tune-ups probably for the last 3 years. Every Tuesday never fails. And Cathey probably doesn't know that it's because of what she shared during that very first conversation that got me into consistency. And so the fact that I can learn something so transformational, so impactful in just a short conversation, and besides the fact, she's just super cool and laid back, and we just laughed and we learned and we exchanged. And then I found out, Rick, that she lives on the other side of the planet in a place called Portland, Oregon. And I was like, I don't know where that is. I don't know how to get there. I barely know how to get to a bridge in my own city. And I was just so happy that that was not a one and done conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's fantastic, Mark. And I think what's important in what you're saying is that not only is there value in every relationship that we have with others, that we can find value in every relationship, not in the sense that you're trying to take something from that other person, that you're looking for that, but just that we can all learn from one another. That in everyone that comes across our path, we can learn from them, and they can help us grow, and we can help them grow. And it goes back to the saying. I'm a big fan of Jim Rohn's work. I had the opportunity to hear him speak live when I was just very young and in my career. And how we're the average of the 5 people that you surround yourself with. And if you are going to surround yourself with quality people like one another, then obviously they're going to help to lift you up and to make you better and challenge you. And like you said, you've been doing you've been consistent on Tuesdays because of something that Cathey said all those years ago. And so that just speaks to, the power that we have over one another in our relationships.
Wow. Mark, thank you. You are very damn consistent, by the way. And they're phenomenal. And, I have to say, if we're going to talk of the subject of impact, Rick, Mark puts out his Tuesday morning tune-ups, and I just always see a flood of people that he has made a big impact on, where people are like commenting something about the past or about their relationship or about how this really hit them this time. So he's definitely got he has just got a slew of people that because of his consistency, he's constantly impacting.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, and thank you for that, Mark, and both of you, because you are providing impact, which does make you, going back to the beginning, does make you heroes. So one component of being a hero, hero is actually an acronym, and one component is that the H is that a hero honors their purpose. And so I'd like to know what, for each of you, what is your purpose? Because your purpose is it defines who you are, how you show up to the world. It's the foundation of everything that you do. So we'll go to you, Mark. We'll go in reverse order this time. We'll go in the normal order, we'll say.
Marc and Cathey.
Yeah, Marc and Cathey. What would you say is your true purpose in life?
Rick, I've always battled with that question, and yet I always come back to this. One, I believe that we're all put on this planet to save the earliest version of ourselves. That's something that I've always believed. We're always trying to save that childhood version. And if there's anything that I'm trying to do for that childhood version and do for everybody else, is I think I was put on this planet to always help people feel better about themselves and to feel more confident about themselves. And however that happens, whatever conversation it is, at the end of the day, if somebody walks away from a conversation or an interaction with myself and they feel 10 times, 100 times, 210% more better about themselves, then I have fulfilled my purpose.
Yeah, that's great. And because I think a lot of people don't go into conversations thinking that. They go into conversations, like I was saying before, thinking, what can I get out of this conversation? They go into the conversation thinking about what's the next thing they're going to say rather than listening, and having it be very surface level, like I talked about earlier. So if you're approaching your conversations of, okay, how can I help this person? How can I make them feel more confident? Then already they're going to come out of the conversation at a better place, because you've set that intent, when you've gone into it, and that's going to translate into your words and your communication and everything. So fantastic. How about you, Cathey?
Marc, by the way, just, first of all, it's you 1,000,000%. And it's so great that you could like bring it to words as you were saying it. I was like, oh my God, thank God he's going first. I gotta like bring mine to words. But I mean, it's not that I didn't know it. Like I know, and I'm going to tell you what I'm kind of knee jerked as well. But I was like, just the way that you so quickly were able to kind of respond to that. That's so you. And now I can also see why you and I, as we deconstruct this a little, because we've never really done this, I can see why we connected so well, because I really feel like my purpose in life, and I didn't even realize it until it was already happening. So it was one of those things that's like, you were just doing. I wasn't like, oh, I have a purpose when I'm like 20 years old and I'm just trying to take care of my family. I was a young mom, as you two know. I was a young single mom for a while, and I wasn't thinking about my purpose in life. But then it started to become a lot more clear as life would, reveal itself. And I really think it's like helping people to seek out, search, and find and share their brilliance. Like I even remember some of the early conversations with Marc. The ones that we were having at Ripe were because he was like, oh, Cathey, I'm about to go into this. Like, it's kind of a big deal for me, but I really want to compete in a Toastmasters contest. And we're having conversations on the level of this. Get this, Rick. We're having a conversation on the level of, I have this great story about me not liking my legs. And I have this story about me like racing a girl in school, and she beats me because I don't want to take my pants off. And so in this story, should I take my pants off? Like, do you think it'd be okay to take my pants off at a Toastmasters? So we run through this whole thing. But as you can see with Marc, he is a very like positive, loving, charismatic, like beautiful human. Like he exudes so much through the way he is. I was like, you definitely have to take your pants off. But I mean, in a good way, right? Like we gotta have like short, like long basketball shorts on something where like, you gotta do it. You should be brave enough to do it. And then when he did it, I was in Malaysia, Rick, when he did it, and he won the semi-champion, for the world champion of public speaking. It was the moment that he won the whole crowd over. I recorded it illegally. I wasn't supposed to be recording in that room. I have that very moment that he pulled his pants down and delivered this message, and I saw him impact huge room full of people. And he went on to go to the final stage. But that, to me, that was like it was such a beautiful moment of being able to like share in that joy with Marc. And, to take something down to that specificity, to be able to share his brilliance through the way that he delivered it. Now I know why we're connected. It's all clear, Marc.
It's all about him taking his pants off on stage. That was the spark moment.
And getting away with it.
You can go back to this.
Actually, like we didn't know how they were going to act in Malaysia. Like you could have been in jail. I don't know.
Yeah. Now that'd be a whole nother story. And then you'd be like, well, maybe I should check my facts before I make a recommendation next time.
Exactly. Maybe I should check myself next time.
Oh man. But I got to tell you, Rick, this is, and I know, Rick, anytime you listen to Cathey and I talk, we can talk about each other for days. And it'll always be so authentic and real. When she says that her purpose is helping people to realize and to communicate their brilliance, she does it phenomenally well, and she does it from the heart. And she's got so many brilliant ideas. I think one of Cathey's gifts that she gives to the world is this whole idea of, one, not only how do you express yourself, but how do you express yourself through concepts, and how do you share an idea that sounds different than what everybody else is saying. And like I said, I've learned so much from Cathey, and that's why I'm always trying to connect Cathey with as many people as I know, because that really is her gift. And if anybody can walk away from this conversation thinking about what is your brilliance and how can you bring it out, and How can you communicate it? I hope that that is something that people can gain when they listen to this conversation today, because you all have brilliance and you all have a lot to be confident about.
Yeah, and I'm sure they will. I'm sure they will in hearing that, just in hearing you both share about, what your purpose is and how you bring that out in others, because it's evident how you bring it out in each other. And that will hopefully empower our listeners to do the same. So in moving on with that acronym is engages their audience in their mission. And I know you do that through your podcast. So just share briefly about the podcast, it's about to go down, and what type of work you do on the podcast. I'll let one of you, whoever wants to go.
I'll pop it back over here, Mark, because
Okay.
it came from we just realized the other day that it's exactly the 2-year anniversary for me leaving a voicemail on Mark. I didn't get a hold of Mark, and I was like, hey, Mark, I'm kind of thinking of a partnership. I want to do something with you. Can you call me back? And then he's like, and then from his perspective, he said, he thought, go ahead, Mark, you tell your side.
It doesn't matter what she says, I'm all in.
So he basically called me up and said, I'm all in. And then, as we started talking, we were like, maybe we should prepare, have conversations with people. We always knew it was going to be about ideas, but it wasn't until we talked for probably, I don't know, probably a week or two, Mark, right? We had several conversations. Then we finally were like, it was right in front of us. Why didn't we realize it? But we should be pulling the curtains back and having the idea conversations, if you will, the same way that we would with our clients, like to show people what it looks like, to come up with, come up with these brilliant concepts that people can use, like spark moments, right? Where we have these conversations with people, we can come up with things that people could use to have impact in what they're speaking about. So that's kind of where it was born. And now we are, and you are going to be part of, because yes, we did we recorded your show and we loved it so much. We're kicking off season 5 with it. So we're getting ready to kick off. Yeah.
Kickoff of season 5.
Yep. And it's coming out in like 2 weeks. So
yeah.
All right. Well, very cool. Well, thank you for that. But thank you for sharing what the show's about, because I think our listeners would appreciate checking it out. Not just the first episode of season 5, but all the other episodes. Just to learn more about your work and everything, and through the show, I know you ripple your message out to the world. You help create those spark moments for others. You've done that today, and I appreciate your openness and your authenticity, because that shows that you do open your heart to the world, which is the O to kind of round out that hero. So whether you thought you were heroes at the beginning, I'm convinced that you are, because you are on the show. You are social impact heroes. So share, other than the podcast, where's the best place for our audience to get in touch with each of you?
Go for it, Cathey.
Oh, okay. Well, our show, of course, it's about to go down with Marc and Cathey. You can find us on YouTube on that. That's where we showcase it, because it's more of like a web show, we call it, as opposed to kind of a podcast or something. We call it a web show. MarcWilliamsSpeaks.com, right?
That's correct.
You can find Marc, and CatheyArmillas.com is where you can find me. My name is a lot less common than Marc Williams, but if you get the C, you're most likely going to get Marc. Marc and I have that weird, we also share that, like, he has a C in his name instead of a K, and then I have an E in my name, so we also have this kind of unique spelling. But yeah.
Okay.
That's how you can find us.
How you can find us.
People will be able to remember the C and the C and the E and all the things to help find you. So before we wrap up, there's one question that I ask all guests here on the iSpark Change podcast, and it is a big one. We like to ask the tough questions, like, what is your purpose on this show, Marc and Cathey? So this is a big one. Our mission, which I believe I shared on your show, our mission at iSpark Change is to positively impact 1 billion people in the next 5 years through our community and through our work. Now, we know we can't do this alone. We know that we need impact heroes like you all to help us help show the way for others, because many people will out there who are listening or watching will feel like I did for a long time, that who am I to change the world? Who am I to make a difference? Who am I to have impact? And what we hope to portray through this show is that all of us have impact on a daily basis. We literally are impacting others. And if we choose, like you two were saying, to make it positive, then that's going to have tons of spark moments that go far and wide. So being social impact heroes, we value your opinion on the podcast. And so I want you to look into the iSpark Change crystal ball and tell me, what can the world become if everyone starts believing that they can have an impact to change the world?
I'm going to be such an English teacher here right now and just say, Rick, can you ask that question just one more time?
Okay. I'll ask it a slightly different way. What type of world can we create if everyone believes that they can have an impact on the future and change the world with their daily actions?
For me, in the crystal ball, the world looks like a place where we're all walking outside, making eye contact with each other, smiling at each other, nodding towards each other, acknowledging each other's presence, and looking for moments when we can help each other, even if it's something as small as helping someone across the street, but noticing, actually looking for people who need help and doing whatever it is we can collectively, not just one person sitting on a subway car looking, but everybody together doing something to help each other. So for me, in that crystal ball, the spark moment that would change the world is everyone looking, smiling, doing for each other.
Beautiful, beautiful, and simplistic. Beautiful and simple for everyone to do, for everyone and anyone to do anywhere they are.
You know what I thought of when I heard you ask the question, especially when you asked it the second time? I couldn't get this word out of my head, but Ubuntu came to my mind, because I feel like it's such, like, I feel like it feels unattainable sometimes, but Ubuntu is that thing of like, I am because you are. And I would see that if everybody saw their own impact, I think that they would start to also recognize it in others. And that's when I think it's the little energy thing that Marc and I found when we first met. Like, it's like, oh, I see so much of myself in you. I see these things about you that I love that really connect, and they create such an energetic connection. And I think you can find it with every single person that you ever come across or meet. And so that's how I would see the world, is in a state of Ubuntu.
Yeah, wow. I love how you put that, Cathey, because, and I'm going to flip it a little bit for purposes of the audience to help to really see how important that is if people started seeing the negative impact, the impact of themselves in others, how would that change parenting? How would that change how people interact with others at work? How does that change with someone on the street that you see on the subway, or in East LA at the bus stop that you don't know subways? Well, there are subways now, but you know what I mean. But how would that?
But that's another story.
That's another story. But how would that change that impact? Because if you see the negative impact, the ramifications of your lack of action, then I think that's even more powerful to people, because our brains are so attuned to the negative, and research shows that they are, historically from how we've evolved. Then it's a big eye opener. I think it's a big eye opener for people that think, okay, well, yeah, maybe I should hold the door for this person. But if you don't, and then if you didn't hold the door, and then you could fast forward and see that by not holding the door, it caused them to drop their bag and spill their grocery and all, you'd be like, oh, well, shoot, I'm definitely going to hold the door. Yeah. But you don't see that cost of inaction, which is huge. And so thank you for pointing that out, because I think just that whole perspective of thinking of, what the impact that you have in others and see it in others is just so eye-opening for people.
I love that.
My mind is blown with that. My mind is absolutely blown with that.
Where's my mic? Where's my mic that I can drop?
Yeah.
Got one for her too.
Wow. I was just going to say, Rick, with that thought, and Cathey and I talked about this the other day, you always have another chance every day.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can acknowledge the negative impact that we may be having on somebody today, then hopefully tomorrow we will change the way we treat the next person we come across, or that same person when we come across them the next time. So I just want to share with you, Rick, that there was a lot of brilliance in what you just said, a lot of transformational power in what you just said. So thank you for sharing that.
Well, thank you, Mark. And I think what you added is very poignant, because we don't get a lot of do-overs in life, but especially if you think of, how you're interacting with someone as a parent or a coworker, you're going to get a lot of do-overs in those situations. And you get the chance to just, do-over in the sense that you can change that impact and you can correct behavior and those type of things. And yeah, I know from personal experience that I've had situations, with my daughters, and we only have, one left in the house, my youngest, Haley, but there's been times, we're very similar. My wife always likes to say, and we're both very stubborn, and, we'll kind of butt heads. And then I'll always realize it right away. Like I've gotten to the point where, I think I'm farther along in my development that, rather than being stubborn for a longer period of time, now almost, 2 seconds later, I'm like, oh, I shouldn't have said that, and then I can apologize quickly and I can correct it quickly and not go further down some bad rabbit hole in that interaction. And so for people to realize that even if it's not that fast, even if it's the next day or the next week or whatever, you still have the chance to, make amends or to, create a better impact on that individual, which will a better spark moment. Yeah.
I want to add one more layer, because we're adding layers now. I'm just going to
add that layer.
Final layer here, maybe, because we might have just outlayered this whole thing, because it was all great stuff. Marc, you really inspired me. This was maybe we were just having a conversation. I don't remember when it was. Maybe it was during a show. I guess I can't remember where it originated, but I know it came from you. But Marc had a moment where he talked about how he had this dream to give his mom, was your mom, right? Give your mom a home, right? And his mom passed away. And so you would think that the dream would be gone, but it wasn't. He just was able to fulfill it in another way. He was able to fulfill it for her grandkids and for, and so that also made me think too of people that have had maybe sour relationship. Not that Marc's wasn't with his mom, but like maybe people that have had a sour relationship with a parent or something. And even if they're gone, there's a way to still fulfill the intention that you had for that person just through other people. So anyway.
Yeah, that's important. And it speaks to that legacy that we can leave behind, and that, you too, your work will leave a legacy, long after you're done, singing rap songs and wearing Brooklyn and East Coast t-shirts. You'll have that legacy, and I'm glad that we could connect and be a part of it. I'm glad that members of the iSpark Change community could learn more about you. So, Marc, Cathey, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you very much for sharing everything today, and for your wisdom and your authenticity.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
All right. Impact Heroes, we want to thank Marc and Cathey for taking time today to share their heart and wisdom with you all. And remember, it's our stories that connect us, and we loved hearing their stories and all about their beautiful connection that they have with one another. So Marc and Cathey, you truly are iSpark Change social impact heroes. See you all next time. Remember, Impact Heroes, every positive action can be a spark moment that has a ripple effect that spreads far beyond the initial act. So go out there and spark change. Don't forget, if you enjoyed this episode, then please smash that 5-star rating on iTunes or Spotify and leave a review. We value your comments and we want to hear from you in the community. Thank you for listening. God bless you, and we'll see you next week on the I Spark Change podcast.